The Supreme Court could soon hear another wedding cake case, this time from Christian bakers in Oregon who were hit with a massive fine and were forced to close their business after refusing to bake a custom wedding cake for a lesbian couple. They have now officially appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Joining me now, Melissa and Aaron Klein, the couple who own Sweet Cakes by Melissa, and Kelly Shackelford from First Liberty Institute heading up their legal proceedings. Great to have all of you with us.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us on.
Aaron and Melissa, I've been following your case for years as this has been going on. A lot of folks don't know all the twists and turns, and we don't have time to get into all of them, but you did lose your business. You've got a big family. How are you all faring now?
Well, Aaron's, he's working at a job, and so he's paying the bills.
You guys are surviving. Did you think that you would make it to the Supreme Court? Because now the justices will have to vote on whether or not to take your case, but it's possible that's where you'll end up.
Yeah, we really hope so.
Yeah, we're hoping they'll take the case.
Well, Kelly, I mean, you're leading that effort. I want to read something that you put in the petition to the court. You said, the Kleins served all customers regardless of sexual orientation. This, too, was an expression of the Kleins' faith, which teaches that all persons are made in the image of God and are therefore deserving of dignity. We know the Kleins had served this couple before, but it wasn't until they came for a custom wedding cake that the religious issues came to the forefront. And I know that you're really hammering on free speech issues as well and hoping to get the court to take this case.
Absolutely, Shannon. This shouldn't happen to any American. I mean, they've been, fined $135,000, had their business closed. There actually was a gag order at the beginning telling them not to speak publicly their beliefs about marriage. And this is a great case for the court to deal with this issue and really dispose of it for the whole country. This is about whether we have free speech or whether the government can come to people and say, you will speak our message that we want you to speak, or we will shut down your business. I can't think of a better set of facts with what's happened to Melissa and Aaron. And I wanted people watching this to realize, I mean, this is not just Melissa and Aaron. I mean, if the government can do this to them, they can do this to you. So
if you think 9 years of personal and legal intimidation, threats, hatred, and legitimate bigotry against them would cause them to break, well, you can bet your little sweet cakes that you'd be wrong. Standing on the life-changing strength of their God and Savior, Aaron and Melissa Klein, today on Resonant Truth. Aaron and Melissa Klein, thank you so much for joining our podcast this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
So I have spent a great deal of time researching your story, and I'd like to make sure that I've got it right in my understanding about the legal path that you guys have gone down for the past few years. I think I've got it right, but boy, has there been a number of twists and turns throughout this process. So can you give us a quick update on where things stand from a legal perspective, and for people that may not be quite as familiar with your story, Aaron and Melissa, if you can give a little bit of a background to that as you provide that answer, that would be great.
Well, kind of starts back in 2013 in Oregon, where we had our bakery. And what had happened was Oregon, I guess a few years back, 2007, had passed a non-discrimination law that included sexual orientation. That should never really come up in a situation at all, but with us doing weddings, we kind of saw it coming down the pike eventually. We didn't think it was such a big deal. We thought it might be a civil matter or something like that. But when the lady and her mom came in asking for a same-sex wedding cake, of course, with our Christian faith, we couldn't do it. And that kind of started this whole thing that has now gone on. And the legal battle has been going on for close to 9 years now. And where we sit now is actually getting ready to petition the United States Supreme Court again to take our case. They gave it a review a few years back, but sent it back to Oregon to be revisited in light of the Jack Phillips case.
It would seem that that case, which is technically Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission with Jack Phillips, it would seem that that would have been an absolute precedent setter from a legal perspective for your case. Now, but if you look at the language that is used in reviewing that case, it's described as a narrow decision. So do you get why it may not have been as strong a precedent setter for your particular case?
It did help our case quite a bit. That's why it was remanded back to the state of Oregon. The Supreme Court instructed the Oregon State Court of Appeals to look at the case in light of that decision to see if there was any hostility towards our religious beliefs on marriage. The court did find that there was hostility or I can't remember exactly, animus towards our religious beliefs on marriage. But the problem was they didn't want to say that totally overturned the situation like the Supreme Court did with Jack Phillips' case. Instead, the state of Oregon decided to send that back to the Bureau of Labor and Industry and have them revisit it and look at it again to see if that played into the amount of damages that were awarded.
You know, it's interesting looking back at that, and John and I just completed a podcast on the recent Dobbs decision, and I took and integrated a snippet of the SCOTUS discussion about Dobbs, and it was notable that Sotomayor had such a tone of disdain for the argument of the start of life being a religious argument. And if you go back and listen to that, or if you listen to our podcast, you can see what I'm relating to there. The reason why I bring that up is that she was one of the two dissenters in the Colorado case, and the other was Ginsburg. And so it's interesting when it comes to the future of religious freedom. You know what some of the liberal judges, what their de facto stance is going to be on some of these things before the argument even gets to the court. That's unfortunate, because that means that they're there for a reason other than to really apply blind judicial decisions to some of these really critical aspects of the 21st century American society. Really unfortunate. Well, let me ask you guys the key question. Melissa, as my wife and I were sitting by our koi pond having our coffee this morning, I asked her, I was telling her about the two of you, and I asked her, if we were in a situation, we've got 3 daughters, my wife and I have been married for 30 odd years. I said, if we were in a situation where we had to put at risk our livelihoods for our Christian beliefs, would we do that? And we both were very quiet during that part of the discussion about this. So the big question for you is, why was it important for you to take a stand on this issue, given the risk to your lives and livelihood?
I think that when you sit there and think about it, and you're kind of just like in a relaxed setting and everything's all nice, and you ask yourself that kind of question, you kind of sit and think about it. But I think that as us as Christians, like, I think even for you guys, like, when the situation comes up, I really feel that God really steps in and gives you that strength and gives you that just that want and that desire to please him and want to just stand up for him. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of neat how that happens, because like sometimes I sit back and I think about things like, oh, would I do that? But then it's like I remember our situation and it's like, oh, whoa, like we didn't even I don't even think we thought about it. We just did it.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm sort of the same way too. I've working at George Fox University. They've kind of gone pretty woke, and I'm just simple Christian and biblical. And I was challenged oftentimes by my position on scripture or just the application. So I kind of commend you for your bravery and your courage and your steadfastness. One thing though I was noticing though, it seems like such a no-brainer, this case, because we have certain freedoms under the Constitution, and the government cannot suppress your rights to express your religion. They can't come up with codes, and that's exactly what Oregon has done. And the one thing I noticed about living in Oregon, and you know, there's really good people in Oregon, but there's also a spirit of what do I want to say this? The duplicity. There's kind of like they have one face where we just want freedoms for everybody, but the reality is they really do not appreciate or respect, you know, your right to personal, private, religious expression. And the first time, you know, they said you can't do that. That's punitive, and that is violating your First Amendment, you know, a free exercise clause. They send it back, and then the Oregon Supreme Court, correct me if I'm wrong here, just try to find another way to do the same thing to you. You know, so it's like
Well,
they're trying to.
in a nutshell, what they did was they were told to look at it again to make sure that we didn't, that they had not used their anti-religious bias to punish us unduly. And what they did is they just said, well, we'll retract the statements such as religious bigotry and those things that were in the record. We'll take those out of the record. We'll adjust the damage award. And now we'll just do a smaller damage award, and that'll make it all better. Well, they never addressed the final issue, which is, what does the Constitution say on that?
I was going to ask you about the couple who came in, or the mom and the daughter who came in. Were they activists? Were they LGBTQ activists?
No, actually, they were return customers. So they had come into our shop before. They actually, the two women came in with it was one of their moms, and they purchased a wedding cake for her mom that was getting married. And so we did that cake for her mom.
Yeah, that's interesting, because sometimes activists will come in and they'll you know, go after somebody just to get their case.
Yeah. Well, and we've had a lot of people like sit there and go, oh, you were targeted, and you know that they just tried to, you know, target you or whatever. And I'm like, no, honestly, like I really don't think that's the case. I really think that they came back and wanted to have they said that one of the cakes that I made was the raspberry fantasy cake, and that they absolutely loved it, and they wanted to, you know, have that for their wedding cake. And I mean, to be honest, like that kind of made me, I felt bad, because I was like, oh, you know, like you really liked it, but unfortunately I just, you know, for this particular event, just can't do this. But if you want to order one, you know, then I'll make you one.
Would you have done anything different? If you could go back, would you have done something different in the situation?
It was such it wasn't a big confrontational thing. It was such a simple thing to say, I'm really sorry, we can't do this, and shouldn't have been a huge issue.
I think for me, maybe like, I mean, I wish I could have been there, but sadly I was at home. I was taking care. I had just had twin boys. And so I was at home taking care of them, and you know, I wish I could have been there, so that way I could have like helped, you know, just share, you know, what our faith was about. Because I mean, maybe they didn't understand, like, you know, why we believe the way we do, and I don't know. I feel like maybe if I could have like been able to explain more and talk to them more, you know, maybe that would have been really nice.
Melissa, let's pick up on that. From that time, have you talked with that family or any member of that family since then. And
No.
and if they were here today on this call, what would you say to them?
Oh gosh.
Well, we did, okay, so during depositions leading up to the original Bureau of Labor and Industry hearing,
Yeah.
we were sitting across the table from them. When the depositions got over, Melissa had the opportunity, and she did talk to them.
Yeah, I went up to Laurel, and I actually gave her a hug and just told her that, you know, that this was not intended to, you know, hurt anybody. Like that's not what this was about. And she said, I know. So I don't, and that was pretty much it. And then we kind of got ushered out and stuff. And then I attempted to try to go talk to Rachel as well. But she refused. She did not want to talk to me.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about obviously your motivation, regardless of how this is characterized, and the same thing for the Colorado situation. This is characterized as some sort of bias or hatred. There's not a single ounce of truth in any of that whatsoever. This has to do with Christian beliefs and that perspective on the lives of people that take that commitment seriously. That's what this is about. Let's talk about the spiritual domain then from this event. What has been that impact on you individually, as a couple? There's the natural element of this, the impact to your businesses, your jobs, your relationships, the avalanche of media that I would imagine 20 years ago you guys wouldn't have been able to anticipate on your lives and marriage and such. But so you've got that reality that you've had to deal with. But at the end of the day, then somebody that thinks from a spiritual perspective also has an evolution of their spiritual maturity as they navigate through these waters. Can you guys talk about that a little bit?
A lot of people, you know, they don't know the whole story, like little details, you know, behind our whole story with it. But when we opened up the bakery, we actually had we had a dedication of our bakery, and we had our pastor come and people from the church, and you know, just asked for prayer, and just we dedicated our business to God because we felt like, okay, he gave us this opportunity, he opened this door for us, and so we want to make sure that everything that we do within this business, we are edifying and glorifying him. So you know, that was our main goal with the business, was just to glorify God, and that included with the cakes that I did, like the events that I'd be a part of. I mean, I had people come in and ask for cakes that were inappropriate, and I wouldn't do those. I had to say, I'm sorry, you know, I can't do that. I actually even had one of my close friends come in and ask me to make her a divorce cake. And I was like, what? You know me? Why are you even asking me of this? And luckily, you know, she was my friend, so I was able to like just be like, what, are you kidding me? But I just, that wasn't it just wasn't something that I felt that like God gave me the ability to do the art and the, you know, the cakes. Like I didn't do any school. I didn't, it was given from God. And so I felt like, okay, I have to, in all that I do, I have to please him and make him happy. But I will say for me, even at that time, I struggled a lot I still struggle with my faith, and I really struggled with trusting God. And after all this, it's been what, 10 years now going through all this. all I can say is that he has proven himself to me over and over and over again. And like my heart has grown like 50 million times bigger for him. And I don't know, it's just crazy. Like, just to think of my trust is like, I mean, now I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, God's got this. As to before, it was like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? How am I gonna pay this bill? What are we? And now I'm just like, okay, Lord, you've got this. I'm good. So that's for me personally.
That's pretty amazing. So, Melissa and Aaron, your perspective on this, I think, is important as well. So there's a lot of people in America today, especially in America today. Now, I wouldn't have said this 5 years ago, but this is almost a normal event today, where taking a stand for your principles, and certainly your Christian principles, is a threat, is seen as a threat. And, cancellation of Christians is a very common thing these days. And there's a lot of people that feel like they need to walk around muted, silent, just to survive, just to get along, not looking for a fight. They're just wanting to pay their bills and take care of their family. Fact of the matter is, this is an absolute warfare where the left and what we consider to be the enemy is coming into our businesses, our schools, our homes. This is a direct frontal attack. This isn't something on an indirect basis. This is a direct attack these days. So here's my question to you. There had to have been that moment in this process that you had the great doubt where you said, wow, is all of this worth it? Or anybody else that hasn't dealt with this yet, that may be forced to make that same type of decision. Can you walk us through that moment and how the both of you addressed that concern at that moment?
For me, I don't know. I know that 1 Timothy 5, it's explicitly said, don't take part in another man's sins. And that's what we're called to do, is be different. And so for me, I've never really had a moment where I doubted just simply saying, no, thank you. I don't want to be a part of that, because that's literally what it came down to. I never for a second that I think that was wrong. I never thought we were going to have such a huge issue over it. It's not something like where we're wanting to back, or at least for me, I've never wanted to backtrack. I've never wanted, I'm in the fight because of what the government has decided to do, not because of anything that I've done. This was something that I was well within my rights to do as a business owner, as a citizen of the country, as somebody who's protected by the Constitution. It should not be an issue. So it's never been an issue of me saying, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have done that, because there was nothing abrasive about it. There was nothing confrontational about it. It was so simplistic, just I'm sorry, I just can't be a part of this. And it had such a huge effect, such a big recoil from the left, just going, oh my gosh, how could you do this? You're such a hateful bigot. And I'm going, because I apologized and said, I just can't, I can't do this, and we know that the Bible says, remember, when they hate you because of me, they hated me first. That's what Jesus said. Well, I'm okay with that. I'm in good company.
So, well, now for me, my answer is going to be a little bit different than Aaron's. I actually, before I even opened up my business and I started doing my business from my home, way back, long time ago, probably like 2007. I thought it was 2006 or 7, yeah. I actually got an email from a woman asking me to do a same-sex wedding cake, and I kind of panicked because I was like, oh my gosh, what do I say? Because I'm not a confrontational person. I don't want to hurt people's feelings. I genuinely care about people. And so I called my pastor, and I was like, I in my heart, I don't feel that it's right because of what the Bible says. So what do I do? And, he encouraged me to pray about it and to just be honest with her. And so I prayed, and I felt that God gave me the right words to say. And I wrote her back, and I shared my faith with her, and I shared my reasoning, and just tried my best to explain to her that it's not about her. It's just about my faith and about the way I believe. And then I pressed send, and my heart was just pounding. And I'm like, oh gosh, what's going to come back? And she emailed me back, and she said, I really appreciate your honesty, and I thank you so much for your time. And it was like, oh, thank God. But I still, like, from that point on, I still struggled because I'm in such a different place today than I was before, and so much more bold and willing to just say the way I believe. But back then I was really just very scared and very, again, didn't want to upset somebody, didn't want to offend somebody, didn't want somebody mad at me, or some things like that. So that was really, so I can understand other people out there, walking around and not wanting to have a fight, or not wanting to, just wanting to live their lives and keep quiet. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy, but I'll say that after going through this now, like, now I'll scream from the rooftops, like, just because of watching what God does in your life when you are bold for him. It is like the most amazing thing, and the strength that he gives you in it. Like, you might be scared to death at first, but he really he steps in. And it's awesome.
Wow. Go ahead, John.
I'm a church historian. So in moments like you've experienced, other people have experienced through time, especially in the first century. So and America's changed in 200 years. We were such a Christian nation to start with. And now we have morphed to the secular, anti-religious sort of socialist state, which is Oregon. Pretty hardcore right now too. So I want to say what you're experiencing or have experienced is what first century Christians experienced too in Rome, and in the Greco-Roman Empire, where you stand for your faith, and they don't like it, they don't want it. I always find it's very interesting because you have a conviction. We have convictions, and we follow our convictions. And people go like, "You're so extreme," and I go, "Do you not know what conviction is? It's just you don't compromise. You do that." So it is tough. There's always a cost, and I think y'all should your true colors and what you're willing to endure for the sake of the cross and biblical truth. So that's good. So one question though, and I don't know where, you don't have to share if you don't want to, where in Montana are you all at right now?
So we're in Ronan, Montana, which is about 20 minutes south of Flathead Lake.
Okay, so I was telling Jeffrey before, we had a cabin right about 2 miles from Glacier and 6 miles from the Canadian border. But I was wondering, do you have support from the locals for your position, and especially, and how did it compare to Oregon? I was just kind of wondering about the different the culture.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in a different world over here. The support that's been here is amazing, and to see that people, when I had my shop back in Oregon, when this was all going on, people would come in, and I'd have stickers that I put on my box, and they would come in and order, and then they'd be, "Oh, can you please not put the sticker on the box?" And I would be like, oh, okay. And some people would share that, "Oh, we have family members, we just don't want to cause any problems." And and here everybody wants my sticker. They want to hand out my cards. They're sharing with everybody and all their friends. And it's been really amazing to go from, like, I just kind of started my business out of my house like 7 months ago, and we're already looking to buy a place because I just have too much cake everywhere. My family likes it, but
Sounds like a problem I would like to. That sounds
Yeah.
really good. I would like that. So, yeah, because Gresham, I mean, it's not. Is Gresham in Multnomah County?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're in the Jeff talks about a battlefield. You're right in it,
Yeah.
right there. So that's crazy. I think, and you talk about how your faith has been emboldened, and I think that's a natural sort of consequence of standing up for God, actually. And then it's a lot of people say, "Oh, think about what you lost." And I was going to ask, how much were you financially hurt by the decisions? And then you answer that, and then I go like, but yet you still persevered,
Right.
which says so much about what your priority is in life, with God in the equation.
Yeah.
Right?
So it was kind of weird because so when this happened, the activist type sought out every business connection we had, and they
Cut it off.
literally cut off her the area of business she made the most money in, which was wedding cakes, almost completely dried up.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And
Yeah, because nobody wanted, I mean, I had some pretty big vendors on my,
wedding venues and
yeah,
such.
yeah, and they wanted nothing. They wanted absolutely nothing to do with me, didn't want to be associated with anything to do with that, which, I mean, I'm fine with that. Like, if that's the way they felt, okay, like they didn't have to. I did have, however, one person that stuck with me, and she was like, you know what? Forget this. Like, I enjoy you, and I love your work, and I love your cakes, and I am gonna recommend your services. And I felt so bad for her because she called me about a week later, and she shared with me, and she was like, Melissa, I know that I said I wanted to keep you up, but she said, but I have literally this whole week have had no business, and my phone is ringing off the hook of people harassing me, and my emails are just flooded with harassments. And she's like, so I just have to take you off. And I told her, I was like, absolutely, please. I don't want this affecting you or your business. But that was just like so sad to hear that, because people don't agree with the way, which is fine. They don't have to agree with the way I believe or what I think, but would go to that extent to try to hurt somebody else's business, just because they like my product. That just blew me away.
I mean, and I would never even think about harassing an Islamic person or a Jewish person, or I would just, because I go, and it's not that because I'm okay with what they're doing. I go, I don't agree with that, but I mean, love is, you got to show love and mercy and kindness and respect, and it's so disrespectful. And the like I said, and the corruption is they're trying to destroy you.
Yep, absolutely.
While they're saying you're being unloving.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like going, here, let me pull that log out of your eye. So, and I do, by the way, I love to hear that you actually took a stand also on not doing a divorce cake, because I think what happens is, because people want things, very hedonistic society, and then they kind of appeal to the lowest denominator. So they'll say, well, homosexuality is just a natural thing, and there's like I'm a sociologist too, so there's absolutely no proof for that at all.
Right.
There's no proof. It's a moral decision.
Right.
But they don't see it that way, and they don't want it to be that way.
Americans.
Well, Kelly, we know the last big case shortly before Justice Kennedy announced his retirement really didn't resolve these questions. But folks on the left say, and I've got a stack of quotes and articles here from people who say that what you're asking for is a license for people to discriminate by using their religion.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, as you mentioned, Aaron and Melissa served everybody. They served this couple. It's only when people are being asked or forced by the government to express a message that they can in their own conscience express that there's a conflict. And we've always believed that the government can't force people to say things they don't believe. If we ever give the government that power, God forbid what happens to our freedoms in this country. So this is a really important case for every American.
Melissa's cakes were all custom designed as per the customer's, wants and desires for how that cake was going to look. And that's why she had a lot of customers come to her. It was about the artistic ability she could put into that cake. And, out of this, we've actually had some of these things that have gone on where now the story has changed where that's all we wanted was just a plain cake, and that's not what we did. So you were at the wrong place if that's what you were wanting. It's just honesty is always the best policy, and so there was nothing I could do but just be honest about where we stood on it. It's just such an odd thing, but then you read things like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I'm sure that they didn't wake up that morning going, we're going to be thrown into a fiery furnace, but nonetheless, the situation came up and they stood on their faith, and that's pretty much what we've been trying to do this whole time.
Aaron, let me pick up on something that Melissa said earlier, and I'm curious, all of us are called into a ministry. Not all of us are called into the ministry from a standpoint of pastoralship or evangelism or that sort of thing, but all of us are called into a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if this process has established any sort of clarity or opportunity for you that maybe you didn't have before this. Do you see something now as a result of this from a standpoint of your message and your story for some community as a result of this situation and an interpretation of your ministry that maybe you didn't before?
I have no problem with encouraging people to stand up, to live out God's word in their life. I've never felt the need to, or the want or the desire or the calling to, like you say, be a pastor or something of that nature. For me, this kind of sounds weird. I'm kind of an introvert. I drive truck for a living. So public speaking somehow came to me. I never sought it out. And I still kind of stand by that, but the Lord's working on me. I'm actually starting to look into helping out at the church a little bit more with some teaching of spots and that kind of thing. And so it is changing me over time, but it's a slow process because I'm kind of stubborn.
Go ahead.
Well, and the reason why I asked that is, Aaron, exactly the point that you just made. For so many of us, God plans to use us exactly where we are. We don't have to go to the mountain and leave and put on sackcloth and ashes, and in a lot of our opportunities for ministry, as we evaluate what that may mean in our lives, yours may have been through a combination of sugar and flour, and that's the basis of your ministry. And so, God gives us specific skills and unique talents, and they are all the same. But it's amazing how some sugar and flour is taken. God's using you and using those that combination of materials to get His word out, and that's an amazing thing. And I think it's a message to everybody. You don't have to look to move to Mount Ararat to seek a ministry. Maybe God puts you exactly where you're at exactly this moment for exactly His purpose. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Awesome.
I also I think what you've done is, in a way, you've made manna. That's what you guys do. You do manna, which is, which I tell you, one of my favorite things in life I discovered was, I'm 55, old now, but when you're 30s, you're just trying to be really industrious and get to that place and make that tons of money. And it was frustrating, because I was making good money, but I just was never satisfied. And then the thought occurred to me one day that God always provides the manna, the day-to-day thing, and it was more than enough and more than I deserved. But then once I had that mindset, then the financial problems just kind of melted away in many ways, and just to wait upon the Lord, life is more than just making money, and the influence that you've had just by standing up for the truth and, you know, biblical principles, but also constitutional principles, that, you know, that you have influenced so many people and inspired them to do that and push back against the evil of postmodernity, which is this secular, radical, individualistic, very disrespectful, graceless sort of culture that you get in Oregon. My question to you, do y'all miss Oregon?
No. No, I take that back. No, there are aspects of Oregon that I do miss. Like, you know, it's beautiful there. And then of course it has the beach. Yeah.
It's so funny. I miss the coffee. I miss coffee. I miss Moe's clam chowder. I miss the summers. The summers in Oregon are just, you know, when it's not raining.
Yeah.
Those 2 months it doesn't rain. You know, it's so beautiful. But culturally, I just like, oh, maybe, you know, outside the Willamette Valley, you know, Eastern Oregon is great. Maybe coast is fine, but just the culture is just like so, like them coming after you. I find that so vile.
Yeah.
Just so evil. It just and then they're pretending to be doing like they're warriors for truth and righteousness, and I'm like, I don't have to destroy someone's life to be a warrior, you know.
Exactly.
And so they have that. So
Melissa, can you share some of the stories that others have shared with you, or of the positive impact that this has had on people? And as you described that, I'm curious about the degree of support that you've received from the church and other Christians. I'm not talking about quantifying financial support, but the nature of that and the type of that you've experienced. Can you share some stories along that line?
Yeah, I mean, when all this first happened, in our own church, it was a little rough because we quickly found out of a few that did not support us, which kind of shocked us, I would say. But then, you know, of course, then there was ones that did. So at first it was almost a little awkward, I would say, kind of going to church. Like, it felt almost uncomfortable, which really was really hard on me, like emotionally and stuff. But God totally helped me get through that. In the beginning of this, of course, we were flooded with thousands and thousands of emails. Most in the beginning were very hateful, saying things to me that I could never even imagine saying to a person. And I remember just like bawling my eyes out and just being like, I didn't realize that there's people like this in this world. And so I kind of felt a little naive. And then I felt like my eyes were open to like, wow, this world really isn't like what I think it is. But throughout the years, God has really strengthened my heart in being able to, like, people can call me anything now, and I'm just like, okay, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. Like, I know I'm not that. But I did get also in the midst of that a lot of emails that were so encouraging and like shocking to me, because I didn't realize with our story the impact that it had on other people by just reading just a simple story that I mean, that's how I felt. It's like, it's nothing that big, but I got a lot of emails of people saying that it tremendously just impacted them and made them think of things different and want to live their lives different. And I was just in awe over that, because I still am, because I'm like, wow, God can use anything.
we just do what we do, and it's having an impact,
Yeah, and there's just, and I still to this day I get, every once in a while I get an email of people just encouraging and then sharing with me how much like they've followed our story all these years, and I'm like, wow, and just how much it's just helped them to like grow in their faith and trust God. And I'm just like, that is so cool. And I've also had a few people message me, asking me to pray for them. Recently I had a lady message me about her daughter, and her daughter is gay and is probably going to be getting married soon. And she's facing the invitation to the wedding and doesn't feel that she can attend her own daughter's wedding. And it's not because she doesn't love her daughter. It's because she does not want to celebrate what is going on. And so I've had moments like that to be able to just talk to people and, pray with them, because I can't imagine that, like, my own child and having to make that kind of a decision. That would be really, really hard. But, when you stand for the Lord, and that's like all I could encourage her with was, if you believe in God and, that's where your heart is, and your purpose on this earth is to please Him, then you do that. You please Him, and you love your daughter still, and, hopefully help her to understand that you love her, and that it's just, you can't partake in this event. And so I haven't heard anything back from her yet, but she definitely was very appreciative that I was there for her. So that was kind of cool to, be able to be there for somebody that is kind of facing, in my eyes, even bigger than what we faced.
Aaron, if inevitably there's going to be somebody else out there in the same situation in another state, and in another situation, basically in the same boat as you guys are. And this question is more tactical, given what you've learned. If there is another business owner that finds themselves in a similar situation, what would you advise them? I would imagine, Melissa, as you put together your business plan for your bakery, you didn't include adjudication at the Supreme Court level and what that process is all about. Okay,
No.
I'm ready with my business plan. So given what you've learned from that perspective, at what point to involve representation and how that works, and just getting over the shock factor of, oh my goodness, what does this mean to me right now and where we're at, just trying to build a bakery. What would you, how would you advise another business owner that finds themselves in a similar situation?
We have a finite time here on earth to honor God with our lives, so be sure you're doing that. Secondly, there are numerous legal firms out there that help with this kind of stuff. We have First Liberty Institute, who is fighting our legal battle. It's a nonprofit. We've had a little come out of pocket, but that was due to some other issues. They're 100% free, and they will stand with you. They will stand for you, and they have done a bang up job. When do you get legal representation? As soon as that complaint comes in the mail, because the firestorm that follows can get pretty intense.
I was wondering, in Montana, are there any similar cases going on like yours in Oregon, or is it just too conservative a state for that to happen?
Montana, when we moved here, we got to vote in the election right after we moved here, and we elected a conservative governor, and the House of Representatives passed a Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and he signed it into law. This will not happen in Montana like it happened in Oregon. So we're praising God for being here.
Yeah.
To me, it's just, I think they're so blinded by their hedonism, they don't understand that the Bill of Rights protects them too. So when they're fighting against it, they're committing suicide, really political suicide. And I'm like, one thing we haven't talked about yet is the makeup of the Oregon Supreme Court, which with Kate Brown and all her appointments, And Jeff and I have talked about this on other episodes about, when the presidents pick these political activists versus constitutionalists. Because I go, listen, if I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, if you're a constitutionalist, it's fine because you're going to do that. But that's not what you get in Oregon. They pick political activists who are anti-constitutional, and this is one of the most basic principles of freedom that we have is the freedom of religion. And they hate it.
So we went on a cross-country drive / fly a few years back, and what happened was we drove down to Texas to meet up with the attorneys down there at First Liberty. They wanted us to fly. I hate flying, so we drove down there, and we kind of kept driving. Ended up over in Tennessee, flew to New York, and then back to Tennessee. And we drove through Montana on the way back, and that was pretty much it. I was pushing to move here I think it took us about 4 years to get out here, but pushing Melissa to be on board with moving out here. And I think now that we have, she's happy to have done it.
Oh, yeah.
So Aaron, I've got to ask you this question, and this is just to Aaron, all right? And Aaron, I don't want you to sell too hard on this answer because I've just lost 26 pounds. I'm on my way to 50-pound weight loss. But let's talk about the product a little bit first. And since the name is Sweet Cakes by Melissa, I'm guessing that she's the artist. What is it about that product that makes Sweet Cakes by Melissa so special that she could draw this much interest just to begin with? And obviously you've been building that business from that, but it all boils down to Melissa's artistry. What is it that makes her perspective and her product so unique?
The product, it's tastes good. It's from scratch. It's, what you'd want to see in a bakery. But I'd say what sells the product, what makes the product is Melissa. I don't think there was a customer that came through the door that was not some sort of friend with Melissa after they left. She would have a 20-minute conversation with somebody wanting to buy a cookie, There was numerous times when we were past closing and she's still talking with the bride and groom. They've been there for a cake tasting for 3 hours and she just keeps talking and it was a personality and it was her love for the craft and the artistic and all that. And she's just a people person. And I think that's really what it was about. It wasn't that you couldn't get cake somewhere else. You couldn't get Melissa somewhere else.
Wow. Hey, Melissa, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
How can people provide support to you with where you're at right now? Certainly they're concerned about your situation, that they want to help take a stand with you. Obviously, financial support is crucial in this. And then for your business, you've got some new plans for your business that people could participate in supporting, in addition to just buying a whole bunch of what you got right now. And I'm assuming that you ship your stuff across the country, correct?
I do.
Okay, all right. So talk about people interested in supporting your mission, your situation, and even your business. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So, well, right now we're in the process of trying to buy a location. We have until August 31st to come up with our down payment. And so I've been doing a cookie fundraiser because that's super easy it's just me doing it. So it's super easy for me to bake a ton of chocolate chip cookies and get them out the door. So I've been baking a lot, but that's definitely if people would like to help support us reopening our business, that would be definitely one way. And they can just email me at sweetcakesbymelissa.com, or they can go onto my Facebook page under Sweet Cakes by Melissa. And then what was the other thing?
Legally.
Legally.
Yeah. So
we have
legally, Well, no, okay, so for the purposes of not only to fighting this case, to fighting it in the courts, it's firstliberty.org is that would lead them to where they could donate to basically
Help
the
fight.
legal fund of it, and that's who's been representing us for, oh gosh,
For a while.
7 years now, I think.
Yeah.
So, and a great bunch of people, good at what they do, and we feel blessed to have them.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I guess if there's, like you had said, anybody that just financially wants to help us out, we have, what's it called? Continue to Give. They can go to Continue to Give and do it that way if they would like. Or just order cookies.
Or that, yeah.
Okay, yeah, don't forget that part. So everything that Melissa just covered, as well as Aaron, you're going to see as links underneath the video. If you missed any of that, then check the links below. Aaron, what's ahead as far as where the legal process goes from now? At this point, the Supreme Court has forced us back into the hands of the, as I understand it, the Oregon Supreme Court. Talk about the options from there. I am aware that they modified an earlier decision from the financial penalty against you, I think earlier this year. But what are the most viable options from here, or paths forward from here? And how are you planned to deal with those if they take a turn, in a direction that none of us would want?
Well, we're at the point now where we are currently getting ready to appeal to the United States Supreme Court for the second time. We're fairly confident they will take the case at this point for full review. And the reasoning behind that is they instructed the Oregon State Court of Appeals to look for that bias, that animus towards religious views. And when the Oregon State Court of Appeals found it, but did not overturn the case, it was totally unacceptable. So we're going back to the Supreme Court, asking them to look at it to give us justice in this situation. Now, we did have the Oregon State Court of Appeals remand it back down to the Bureau of Labor and Industry, where a new commissioner was in place to revisit the damage award, not the guilty verdict, but just the damage award. And she came out with a lower damage award because she had to remove all of the, I'll just say, rhetoric that was in the decision that was anti-Christian, if you will. Things such as calling my viewpoints religious bigotry, those kinds of things. And now we have that decision out. What the attorneys will do with that, I'm not 100% sure right now. I think we do have the ability to actually appeal that decision. So we might actually have two legal battles going in two different courts at the same time. Kind of an interesting scenario.
So regarding your lawyers, have they given you specific advice, exhortations to do with your business, or do they just said go forward just as usual?
Well, and because I was even debating on if I was gonna do wedding cakes anymore, if I would just not do that, so that way I just don't get into any of that trouble. And my lawyers actually said that's what you do and that's what you love. Like, don't stop doing what you love to do. And I was like, really? But I think that's only because of where we are in Montana, and it's different here. So but yeah, it's still you talk about how they got sent back and then they didn't change anything besides their wording and then tried to lower it. And I'm like, going, Supreme Court said it's wrong. I mean, you're not supposed to do it. I mean, and it's just so evidential. I mean, it's just like, this is not a complex case, it really is. They want it to be because they want to get their way. So that's the problem of having.
It's an irony, because how does how does a bias that affects the damage award not affect the guilty rule? Doesn't a little bit of bias infect the whole thing? I mean, how can you say, well, we were biased when we said this, but not when we said this? It's the same characters doing the same thing, you know. It's if they're biased the whole way through, you know.
Yeah, and but I think that's why she elected them, or she appointed them, I should say. They appoint these people who are anti-Christian, anti-family values. I mean, we haven't really even addressed, like, what you were standing up for. You're just standing up for marriages between a man and a woman, right? Not a man and a man, or a woman and a woman.
Which was at the time Oregon State Constitution defined it as such.
Yeah. So they're going against their own too, to get what they want, which is this again, the narcissism and the hedonism is just amazing, and they're supported at a governmental level too, and that's just like, wow. My other question is, what's your yummiest treat that you make? More importantly, what's the most what's your favorite product? What's your favorite product, Melissa? What's your favorite product?
That's hard because I love sweets.
It's like, don't say keto. Don't
No,
say keto.
No, those are gross.
Oh, so bad.
I'd have to say, well, I love cheesecake. That's like my most favorite. But like I said, I love sweets. So that's really hard.
Anything with sugar in it. Okay.
I don't know. I think for me, with all that I've learned, like I was saying earlier about my faith and my trust growing, and in the beginning of all this, like way in the beginning, talking about that email that I had gotten, had to go to my pastor. The stuff that for me that I've learned is the biggest to me is trusting in God. And I think like what I would share with people is, I think that we as humans tend to way overthink things and think too much. And we need to put in our minds that God is sovereign, God is good, and God looks out for us all the time. And we have to trust in him, and we have to trust in that, and trust that no matter what we go through, as long as we are following him and living our lives for him, he will see us through. And we don't have to fear anything, because he's there. He's, I guess just imagine, like, for me, it was like the eye of the tornado. You've got everything around you just swirling around, looking like, crashing into each other and all this stuff. But yet it's so peaceful and so calm. And that's where you will be, with just staying focused on God and trusting in him. And I feel like ultimately in our lives, that is the biggest thing that we really need to do, is trust in the Lord. Because like for me, now that like I trust in him so much, like I don't overthink things. I don't question things. It's just like, okay, Lord, you're good. You got this. No matter what, like, even if it's bad, you still got this. So I don't know. I would just encourage people out there that are believers to just put your faith and your trust in him, and watch what he does in your life.
Aaron, anything to add to that?
For me, for what we've done, it's just about obedience to God's word, doing what he tells us to do, and let the chips fall where they may. And like Melissa said, it has shown that he is faithful, that he is true to his word, and he does take care of his own.
Many people would take a look at your situation that are trying to go through life, raising a family and building a business, and look at the situation that you're in and say, wow, you must be cursed some way. There's absolutely no way whatsoever that you can have a conversation with Aaron and Melissa Klein and not realize that not only do they not look at their lives as being cursed, they look at their lives as being absolutely blessed. Aaron and Melissa, thank you so much for being a part of our podcast today. Thanks for joining our podcast today. Check the links below on how to purchase a copy of Deconverted, as well as the library of books written by John S. Knox, including the book he mentioned today, Sacroegoism. As we grow our channel and podcast, it helps if you subscribe and hit the like button below, so we would appreciate that. And we have a number of amazing guests in the days ahead, so continue to monitor our channel for new content. One note to wrap up our discussion from today. Keep in mind that Jesus said that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. So while there was every expectation, and there continues to be every expectation that we will be under constant spiritual attack, you've got to keep one thing in mind. Evil does not win, and the church of the living God will never be defeated. The question is, what side of the battle will you be on? Our prayers for you and your family in these dark days. Just remember, while culture attempts to attack and label you with all sorts of hate and mockery, as the writer of Romans says, if God is for us, who can possibly be against us? Thanks for joining us today.